You are now watching The Estate of Creative. I'm your host, Daniel Wagner. Today I'm going to be showing you how I refinish this Ming style Chinese armoire. When the original owners had this piece, they tried to paint it and, well, let's say they succeeded in painting it, but they didn't so much succeed in the paint staying on. Due to the fact that there was no proper preparation of the surfaces before painting, we ended up with a situation where all of the paint was very, very easy to come loose. So the very first thing I decided to do is, well, we got to remove that old paint. Now, since I'm such a superhero, I decided I'm going to use a scrub brush and attempt to scrub the paint right off. After applying some paint stripper and a scrub brush, it really didn't work that well. It seemed like most of what I was doing, what I found worked, was my fingernail. Lots of fingernail. Whole lots of fingernail. And a paint scraper tool that actually helped quite a bit. Oh, this was so satisfying though. Every now and again, I was able to get large pieces to peel right off. Reminded me of those times in summer camp when I was a kid and got sunburns and the skin would just bubble right up and peel right off. You could chase people around with that little dangly piece of skin. It was great. The only difference is this didn't itch nearly as bad. Look at that. Just barely a little scrape with the fingernail and this paint was coming right off. Now try and tell me that that is not a satisfying peel of paint. And of course, like any other self-respecting human being, I wanted to try to get the biggest piece I possibly could. But this is what happens when you don't prepare your surfaces properly. Dip in a little more paint stripper. And they didn't even bother painting the top of the door. Everything was only surface level. There was no real effort put in. It was a quick and dirty paint job, and it was terribly done. But that's okay. That's what we're here to fix today. So I posted up in the middle of my living room with a drop cloth and went to scraping. Credit cards, paint scraper tools, and fingernails were the tools for the job. Now, I'm sure there's some chemical I could have put on this, some easier way, but being me, we just decided to take the hardest route possible. That's the stripper I used, and all I did is just took and brushed it on. Brushed it on, let it sit for about 15-20 minutes, start bubbling up, and then I took my scraper tool and I tried not to mar up the surface underneath. My only goal right now was just to get that paint removed. And boy, did this get tedious. Now, for this part, I had to take the hinges off, these bar hinges, which required me to take a chisel. Well, I took my 5-way scraper tool and I got behind them, and I broke loose the glue, removed the hinges, and then got to sanding the entire piece. Next up, we needed to get that drawer hardware removed so we could sand the face of that drawer. Now, this isn't your standard drawer hardware. These were 2 little pins that were pushed through a tiny hole and then nailed on the backside to hold them in place. There's a little close-up for you there. Look at how dirty those grody fingernails are. That's the sign of a good, hard-working man. You could almost imagine this guy drives a Chevy pickup truck. Well, I don't. I drive a Ford. And I know and I understand that pisses some people off and makes other people very happy. I don't understand why, but that's the world we live in. We must be divided on everything, including what type of pickup truck you drive. At some point, I lost my tool.
Literally just had the tool.
I don't know where in the world
Now it's nowhere to be found.
my damn tool went.
Do your own tools just suddenly disappear on you like that?
My 5-in-1 scraper. It was there a minute ago, and now it's just not.
What the hell?
And I'm looking everywhere. So you get to see me frantically search in 2 camera views for
Hello?
my tool I literally just had.
What?
Maybe it's up top. Oh,
Get
there it is.
back up there. It's back up top.
Now I can continue showing you how I managed to get these little handles off. Pin. Had to kind of pry that pin out. Pull it loose. Use some dikes. Yes, that's what they're called. They're called dikes. It's not an offensive word. And it's a very useful tool. No disrespect to our LGBTQ plus members out there. And then the last step, just pull that puppy on through. They make these holes just barely big enough to slide them on in. But a little tugging, a little pulling. Oh, look at that. It's coming right out, smooth as butter. Alright, next up we're going to give us a little old sand. Now I've got my sander attached crudely to my vacuum cleaner with some duct tape. It's not the most ideal setup, but by God, it was hot outside and I really didn't feel like dragging this thing on out there. So, next up, finish up sanding up this carcass. So much paint. And it's kind of peaceful when you're out here in the shop by yourself, podcast blaring in your ears, just sanding away. Maybe I have too much time on my hands. Now I'm going back around and making sure we touch up everything. And I think we're about ready for paint, so next step, we gotta dust this thing off. Alright, now since I'm a somewhat short fella and can't see the top from the ground, I had to get on a step stool. We're gonna stick some primer paint all over this thing. We've got the surface prepped, sanded. We've got it all wiped down with a lint-free cloth. Now we're just slapping on that coat of primer. The difference is, I'm actually going to paint all the way on the inside. Now I know they make better brushes for this. I know they make short handle brushes for this. But I'm a rebel, and I figure I want to stick that long tool in there. Just jam it in there anyway. Now to grab the inside of the carcass. And when I put the first coat of primer coat on, I either missed the top or had decided I just didn't feel like painting the top. I'm not really sure what happened, but I do catch it later on. I decided it's better to go ahead and paint it. Get that drawer done. And the doors. So far, so good. Now, I've got to address this bad boy. It's looking a little bit like crap, so we're going to take and fix that. So I mix up a little bit of Bondo. You can see in the split shot, I'm just putting in the hardener, spackling it all in there, making it as smooth as I can. And I gotta let it dry. So next up, gotta sand it. After it's all dried out, get it as smooth as I can. And we need to, of course, drill the hole back into it again. I know it doesn't look like much, but after a little bit of coat of paint, it looks just fine. And then to go back and prep the rest of the hinge pieces, I gotta sand them down, get them primed. Same process as the rest of the piece, but they come out looking pretty good. And there was a piece that ended up coming loose that I had to glue. Nothing I couldn't handle. I'm a handy guy. I can do things. So we're going to finish it out with this chalk ultra matte gray paint and then finish it with a clear sealing wax. This is a technique that I've used on a few pieces now that I think makes beautiful furniture. And I'm embarrassed to tell you how many months this project took me to complete. I have a tendency to stall around. And I don't mean to. I'm pretty sure I have this undiagnosed ADHD that prevents me from actually completing projects from time to time, so I have to be very intentional. And any barrier that gets in my way, I will have to make sure to clear those barriers. So in this case, it was just coming out and getting set up for the cameras and everything that was preventing me. So it took me a little while to get back to the project. But there it is. There is my first coat of paint on the carcass. It's hard to tell a real subtle difference in coloring from a video, but it is a light gray. And I think it came out looking really nice. So next up, we need to tape off these surfaces so I can use a little old rub and buff to put a metal finish on these decorative pieces on the front, as well as the hinges and the doorknobs. There it is, the old rub and buff. This stuff is really cool. It's kind of pricey for the size of tube it is, but you just literally take your finger and rub it all over it. Now, since I'm such a rebel, I decided I'm going to go ahead and do this with no gloves on. And of course, now my fingers are so pretty. They're the prettiest gold you've ever seen. I think I look good in gold plating. And of course, about like any other paint, it does seem to require a second coat, especially on these larger surfaces. This rub and buff needs a little extra attention when you get to the larger surfaces. And just like the name implies, it's super simple. You literally just rub and buff it. Now that I'm almost done, that's when I decide it's time to put on a glove. I learned my lesson. That stuff was a pain to get off of my fingers. And of course, no project can ever be complete without a nice cup of coffee and no place to set it. So next up, we got to glue up all of our hinges and make sure that the alignment is all on point. Luckily, everything's already been pre-drilled from previous installations, so it makes it a little easier. However, for some reason, this other hinge wanted to be a pain in my caboose. I had to take the hinge on and off and on and off because the gapping, just for whatever reason, was not looking right. And I may be kind of picky, and I want my stuff to look really, really nice. So there we go. Take it back off, readjust, screw it back on, put the door back on. Oh, nope, still not right. Take it off, put it back on. And look at that. when I went to go put in the drawer, I discovered the paint that I added made the drawer fit way too tight. So I had to go back through and sand down the high spots. Open shut, open shut, open shut, until I could get this thing to fit the way I liked it to fit. I don't mind a drawer to fit a little bit tight, but you shouldn't have to play tug-of-war with the damn thing. It shouldn't be so tight that when you pull it, the entire cabinet comes scooting across the floor. It shouldn't be so tight that you have to sit on your bum, stick your foot against the face of the cabinet, and give it a good tug. That's way too tight. Now the last step, I take this wax coating and just slather it all over that bad boy. And that wax coat gives it a really nice finish. It really completes and protects that matte gray finish. And one thing about this stuff is please make sure you have a well-ventilated area because it does have a strong odor. And in regular old ADHD fashion, I can't find any of the pieces that I had, so I've got to go search through. Oh, whoop, there's a car. I'm super organized. And to this day, as the time of this recording, that pile of hardware is still sitting there waiting for me to put it away. But in the end, I managed finding a couple screws to use. The day has been saved. Now, in going back and re-editing this video after months of working on this project, I now realize that what I was looking for was not screws, but it should have been little brad nails that were in it. For you, that was about 5 minutes ago. For me, months. That took way too long, but I got them. And with a little old screwdriver, we're just going to pop that bad boy back in there. It's not what came out of it, but something had to go back in that hole.
Yeah, that's the trick right there. Put them in your Heck yeah.
Just slap him on the back and see if he'll swallow him now.
Yeah, I swear my mouth is a unsuspecting third hand.
That's what we used to do with fishing worms. You know, when we was trying to put, you know, put the hook on the line, you had to put the worm somewhere.
Yeah, right?
No way you were.
I ain't done the worm thing, but
Yeah, when it's cold, they don't like to wiggle much, so you have to heat them up a little bit in the mouth before you can.
Oh my gosh, Jeff.
yeah, I don't know about worms, but I definitely got a good
Nails.
healthy dose of iron from all the nails I've put in my mouth over the years.
I figured out why I'm
Thank you, ma'am.
Got it?
Yeah.
a little bit on
And finally, one last cup of coffee.
The man himself.
Gotta stop for a coffee break every now and again.
the 45 minutes.
Yeah, I'm wore out, man. I need a drink. Whew, all that work I just did.
But seriously, I promise, I do work hard. I really, really do.
See what you did there. I mean, if it works, it ain't broke.
Oh,
Oh, man. I drop screws so much.
he loses a bunch of.
God bless him. Ooh, did that just go down the vent?
I heard it hit the vent. Did it go down the vent?
Uh-oh. He found it!
I got lucky.
Perhaps I should do a series on all the times I dropped screws and nails and other various implements. For somebody with opposable thumbs, I sure do forget how to use them sometimes. The last step is to make some kind of a decorative handle. Now, I just went down to Walmart and I got a roll of gold rope with some brass looking chain, and I was thinking maybe if I just braid them together, I can make something look presentable. Now, if you remember the original pictures, there was some kind of a rope hanging from it, but it was not attached to anything. And with all the practice I had braiding my young daughter's hair, I was able to accomplish the task in pretty quick order. Not too shabby a braid job for a man stuffed full of toxic masculinity, huh? Next challenge was to figure out where to tie the other ends that made sense, so we went with that. I honestly didn't think my years of macrame experience would come in handy for furniture refinishing, but here we are. Just sticking a little bit, just a touch of hot glue in certain areas in the knots just to prevent them from coming unloose and coming undone. And there you have it, the finished piece. I took some pictures, staged it out, made it look real nice, and have now posted it up online for purchase. I think overall this piece came out quite nice. If you have any advice or tips or ideas of how I could have done this better or could have done this more efficiently or effectively, please let me know. And then with a little bit of staging, coffee mugs and whatnot inside with a little light, and made these killer finishing photos there. It's not a skill I'm like super adept at, but it's something I'm learning. You have been watching The Estate of Creative with Daniel Wagner. That's me. I'm Daniel Wagner. Bye.